Great Barrier Reef is a lacy, living wall spanning more than 2,000 kilometers of islands and submerged reefs between the Queensland coast and the western edge of the Pacific Ocean.
First, we will start with the history. I would like to speak about the people who lived in the Great Barrier Reef before it was established and how it led them and many others to be evicted. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders were there for over 60,000 years, flourishing on the land. However, colonization brought devastation along with it. Violent conflicts and forced displacement pushed many communities off their ancestral lands and waters. They were unfortunately evicted from the land that was rightfully theirs, being the original stewards. Despite their resistance and protests, their voices were ignored and silenced. Today, their deep cultural and ecological knowledge is finally being recognized as vital to the reef's protection. The national park was established because early conservationists sparked a movement, inspiring others to raise their voice and fight for the land to become a national park. During the 1960s, there was a wave of global awareness that began to rise. People around the world started to question how human activity was changing the planet. This idea was extremely prevalent in Australia. As more Australians began to recognize the delicacy of their natural landscapes, new conservation groups started forming. There were two key groups in Australia, the Wildlife Prevention Society of Queensland, and now known as the Australian Marine Conservation Society. These groups united passionate scientists and everyday citizens to fight the good fight.
The Great Barrier Reef was declared as a national park under the Marine Act of 1975 because conservationists fought to prevent drilling and mining of the beautiful land.
There were many stakeholders that were a part of this process. There were the indigenous traditional owners with over 70 traditional owner groups. There were different levels of government. There was recreational industries like fishing and scuba diving who did not support this movement, and there were different environmental conservation and sustainable corporations and societies.
Making the Great Barrier Reef a national park was highly contested. Donald Forbes, for example, was the cane growers executive, and he applied for a lease to mine for oil on the Ellison Reef, but conservationist groups fought back and won. Still, activists knew that one win wasn't enough with large companies continuing to eye the reef for mining and drilling, so they started to launch campaigns like the Save the Reef campaign, which urged the Australian government to take charge to protect the coral reefs and marine ecosystems.
Many of the creatures are exquisitely beautiful, but some seem straight out of science fiction.
The Great Barrier Reef was singled out because it's a global treasure, home to an unparalleled level of biodiversity, stretching over 133,000 square miles and made up of nearly 3,000 individual reefs. It contains the largest collection of coral reefs on Earth. Its sheer scale and diversity made it clear this was the place worth fighting for. Under the IUCN ratings, there are 4 distinct categories that stick out within the Great Barrier Reef: 1A, Category 2, Category 4, and Category 6.
Discussing the threats to the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth, and it is in serious danger. Our focus threat is coral bleaching, a process that happens when corals become stressed by warm water and release the algae that live inside them. Without this algae, called zooxanthellae, the coral loses its color, turns white, becomes weak and vulnerable to disease, and most of the time dies. Coral reefs are more than just beautiful underwater landscapes. They're living structures that support thousands of marine species, provide income for fisheries, and even help purify our oceans. When bleaching happens, it doesn't just affect the coral. It threatens entire food webs, local economies, and the natural balance of our planet. Direct and indirect threats. Direct threats include unsustainable fishing practices and outbreaks of crown-of-thorns starfish, which eat coral and damage entire reef systems. Indirect threats like rising ocean temperatures, runoff filled with pesticides and sediments, and poor water quality all make corals weaker and more likely to bleach. Together, these stresses can create a perfect storm that the reef can't escape from. Historically, coral reefs have had decades to recover between bleaching events, but today heat waves linked to El Nino and climate change have caused 8 mass bleaching events in just the last 30 years. These back-to-back events give the reef no time to heal. Instead, the coral weakens, dies, and loses its ability to rebuild. The management plan focuses on solutions. First, we need to reduce carbon pollution and control agricultural and industrial runoff to keep the reef's waters clear and healthy. Second, we can restore ecosystem balance by protecting natural predators that keep invasive species in check and by enforcing sustainable fishing zones. And finally, education and global cooperation are key, because saving the reef isn't just Australia's job, it's everyone's job.
The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park is managed through the Reef 2050 long-term sustainability plan developed by the Queensland and Australian governments in 2015. The plan emphasizes community involvement, engaging a wide range of stakeholders to ensure effective management. Traditional owners actively manage their country through on-site programs, while scientists, industry experts, and leaders provide research and guidance. Land managers reduce pollutant runoff, and industries adopt sustainable practices that protect the reef while supporting community well-being. This collaborative and adaptive approach is reviewed every 5 years to respond to emerging threats and ensure long-term resilience. The plan focuses on 5 priority areas: limiting climate change impacts, reducing land-based impacts, reducing water-based impacts, influencing international sources of impact, and protecting, rehabilitating, and restoring reef ecosystems. To achieve these goals, the Reef 2050 plan uses several planning tools. Management zones organize the reef for different levels of protection and use, from general use areas to non-take green zones, which ban extractive activities and protect biodiversity. These zones help balance conservation and sustainable use while ensuring recovery of key habitats. Sustainable use limits set thresholds for activities like fishing, dredging, and tourism. For example, there are net fishing limits, dredging restrictions, and bans on fish aggregating devices to prevent overexploitation. Legislation such as the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act of 1999 requires environmental assessments before projects that could harm the reef. The Queensland Planning Act of 2016 and Clean Economy Jobs Act of 2024 also promote sustainable practices and emission reductions. Together, these tools provide the legal and policy framework that guides reef protection. The plan also applies key management principles. First, managers must actively intervene to reduce human-caused threats. Examples include fishing restrictions, dredging bans, and the Crown of Thorns Starfish Control Program, which has removed over 1.2 million coral-eating starfish. Second, since threats are inevitable, managers must anticipate and prepare. The Reef 2050 plan's adaptive design and monitoring systems help respond quickly to coral bleaching and pollution events. Programs like the Tourism Reef Protection Initiative train operators to assist in reef monitoring and predator removal. Finally, threats are best managed through community collaboration. The plan's theme of shared responsibility brings together traditional owners, industries, and scientists. Initiatives like Sea Country Management and the Reef Knowledge System promote stewardship, education, and transparency. While the Reef 2050 plan has made significant progress in protecting biodiversity and cultural values, it has been criticized for weak climate goals and insufficient action on water quality. Emission reduction targets remain below what's needed to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, a threshold UNESCO identifies as crucial for the reef's survival. Progress has also been slow in managing land clearing, sediment runoff, and agricultural pollution due to weak enforcement and outdated water quality targets. Overall, the plan provides a strong foundation for reef protection but faces major challenges including inadequate funding, slow implementation, and global-scale threats that local measures alone cannot solve. The key threats are intensifying faster than the management response. To truly secure the future of the Great Barrier Reef, the Reef 2050 plan will need greater ambition, faster action, stronger governance, and a sharper focus on climate change.